I should have seen it coming. For years I had been the responsible one, the planner, the fixer, the one who made sure everything in the family ran smoothly. And Lauren? Lauren was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. But I never thought they'd actually do this to me. I had been planning this trip for 2 years, 2 long years of overtime shifts, budgeting, and meticulous research to craft the perfect European vacation for my parents. 5-star hotels, private tours, Michelin-starred, restaurants. Nothing but the best for them. It was my way of giving back, of showing appreciation for everything they'd done for me. I imagined the joy on their faces as they walked through the streets of Paris, the awe in their eyes when they saw the canals of Venice, the laughter we'd share over late-night dinners. This was supposed to be our adventure, something unforgettable. But the morning of our departure, everything unraveled. I arrived at my parents' house before dawn, excitement buzzing in my veins despite the early hour. I parked in the driveway, stretching my stiff limbs before heading up the steps. The porch light flickered dimly, and when the door opened, my mother stepped out, dragging her suitcase behind her. "You're late," she chided with a teasing smile. I glanced at the dashboard clock. 6:02 a.m., 2 minutes late. I rolled my eyes playfully. "You'll survive, Mom." I moved to grab her bag when another figure appeared in the doorway. Lauren. My smile froze. She was carrying her own suitcase, her face radiant and smug in a way that immediately set me on edge. A pit formed in my stomach. "What's going on?" My mother's grin widened, too wide, too forced. "Oh, Violet, we decided that Lauren should go instead of you." The world tilted for a second. Instead of me, I looked at my father, hoping for some kind of explanation. He avoided my gaze, busying himself with adjusting his jacket sleeve. My chest tightened. I paid for this trip," I said, my voice strangely hollow. "I planned everything." Mom waved her hand dismissively as if I had brought up something trivial. "And we're so grateful, sweetheart. But you're always working so hard. You can take another trip later." "Lauren really needs this right now." Lauren didn't even have the decency to look guilty. She just smirked. "Thanks for understanding, sis," she murmured, voice dripping with fake sincerity. Understanding? I had spent 2 years making this happen, sacrificed weekends, said no to dinners with friends, lived frugally just so my parents could have the dream vacation they deserved. And now, just like that, I was being replaced. I clenched my jaw. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an accident. This was a choice. And they had chosen Lauren. Again. I forced a tight smile, swallowing the storm raging inside me. Let's get going, then. If they wanted to take Lauren instead of me, fine. But they weren't going to enjoy it. Not on my dime. The drive to the airport was suffocating. Lauren, sitting in the back seat, couldn't stop talking. "Oh my God, Mom, did you see that TikTok about Paris? I can't wait to go shopping there. Do you think we'll have time for that, or will the tours take up the whole day?" My grip on the steering wheel tightened. The tours. The ones I spent months researching. The ones I booked. Mom chuckled. "Of course, sweetheart. We'll figure it out when we get there." We. They didn't even notice I wasn't part of that. We anymore. I focused on the road, breathing deeply through my nose, trying to keep the burning in my chest from spilling out. At one point, my father cleared his throat. "Thank you for driving us, Violet. I know this probably feels unusual." I glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Unusual? That was an interesting way to put it. I forced a smile. "Yeah, Dad. Unusual." He shifted uncomfortably, staring out. The window like he wished he hadn't said anything at all. Lauren leaned forward, resting her chin between the front seats. "You're not mad, right?" Her voice was sugary sweet, but there was an edge to it, like she was daring me to make a scene. "I mean, this is really big of you, letting me go. I could never have afforded this on my own." I clenched my jaw so hard it ached. Letting her go? I swallowed the lump in my throat and forced a smile. Of course, Lauren. Enjoy the trip. Her smirk widened as she sat back. By the time we reached the drop-off zone, my patience was paper thin. I got out, unloaded their suitcases, and stood stiffly as my mother pulled me into a hug. "Thank you for understanding, dear," she said. "This means a lot to us, and to Lauren." I nodded, my hands balled into fists at my sides. Lauren grabbed her bag, adjusting her sunglasses. "Thanks, Violet. You're the best." I watched them disappear into the terminal, my chest tight with anger and something heavier, something deeper. I wasn't the best. I was the fool. Not anymore. The drive home was a blur. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my emotions were simmering just beneath the surface, ready to boil over. I turned off the engine, but instead of getting out, I just sat there, gripping the wheel until my knuckles turned white. I replayed the last hour over and over again. We decided Lauren should go instead. "You can take another trip later. Thanks for understanding, sis." I let out a bitter laugh. I had spent 2 years saving for this trip. 2 years, and they tossed me aside in 2 minutes. I climbed out of the car, walked into my house, and headed straight for my laptop. One by one, I pulled up the reservations. The 5-star hotels, canceled. The guided tours, refunded. The business class flight upgrades, revoked. I sat back, watching the confirmation emails pile up in my inbox. A strange sense of satisfaction settled over me. They wanted Lauren instead of me? Fine, but they wouldn't be enjoying luxury hotels or private tours on my dime. The first call came as soon as their plane landed. I ignored it. Then came the texts. Mom. "Violet, what's going on? The hotel won't let us check in. The reservation is missing. Call me right away." Mom. "This isn't funny. Fix it now." I laughed, shaking my head. Fix it? They actually expected me to step in and clean up their mess. Lauren's voicemail came next. Her voice was sharp, laced with irritation. "Violet, this is so petty. We're stuck here because of you. You need to call the hotel and fix this. Now!" I rolled my eyes and deleted the voicemail without listening to the rest. For years, I had been the one smoothing over every problem, picking up the slack, making sure everyone else was comfortable. Not this time. Then, another call. This time I answered. "Violet," Mom's voice exploded through the speaker. "What have you done? The hotel says the reservation was canceled and none of our tours are booked anymore." I let her rant for a while, my expression calm. Then I said, "Yeah, I canceled them." Silence. Then, "Why would you do that?" "Oh, I don't know, Mom," I said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Maybe because you chose Lauren over me on a trip that I paid for." "We thought you'd understand," she snapped. "Understand." "What?" I shot back. "That all my hard work meant nothing? That I was nothing?" She started to say something else, but I had heard enough. I hung up, and for the first time in years I felt free. The silence lasted barely a day. By the next morning, my phone was vibrating nonstop. Messages, missed calls, voicemails. "Mom, you've gone too far, Violet. Your sister is in tears. Your father is upset. We can't check into any of the hotels." "You booked!" Lauren. "You're acting like a child. Just fix it already." Dad. "We need to talk. This isn't right." I set my phone down and took a long sip of my coffee. Wasn't right? No. What wasn't right was being tossed aside like an afterthought. What wasn't right was spending 2 years planning a trip that I wasn't even invited to. I spent the day cleaning my house, catching up on work, and ignoring every single message. But by evening, curiosity got the best of me. I unlocked my phone and braced myself for the storm. The last voicemail from my mom was dripping with exhaustion and frustration. "Violet, we're back at the airport. The trip is ruined. Your sister is devastated. Your father and I are beyond disappointed. I hope you're happy." I deleted the voicemail without responding, because for the first time in my life, I actually was happy. 3 days later, they came home. I was already sitting on the porch swing, sipping my coffee, when their cab pulled up. Lauren was the first to speak, dragging her suitcase behind her. "Well, I hope you're happy." I raised an eyebrow, unfazed. "Happy about what?" "Our trip was a disaster," Mom exclaimed, throwing up her hands. "We had to sleep in cheap hotels, eat awful food. We couldn't afford anything decent." Lauren crossed her arms. "And don't even get me started on the tours. There weren't any." I took another slow sip of my coffee, letting their complaints wash over me. "Sounds rough," I said flatly. "But hey, you wanted to take Lauren, right? I'm sure you had a great bonding experience." "That's not the point," Mom snapped. "You knew we couldn't afford the kind of trip you planned. You set us up for failure." I stood up, placing my mug on the small table beside me. "No, Mom. I planned a trip for the three of us. Something special. Something I worked hard for. You are the ones who cut me out." Dad exhaled, his tone calmer but no less accusatory. "You didn't have to cancel everything, Violet." "That was extreme." "Was it?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Why should I pay for a trip I wasn't even invited on? If Lauren needed it so badly, you should have planned one yourselves." Lauren rolled her eyes. "You're so dramatic. It's just money, Violet." I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "And you're so entitled, Lauren. Do you have any idea how much time, effort, and sacrifice went into planning that trip? Or do you just assume things magically work out for you because someone else is always picking up the slack?" They fell silent. For the first time, they didn't have a response. "I've spent my entire life being the responsible one," I continued, my voice steady but firm. "The one who plans, the one who fixes, the one who makes sure everyone is happy. And you've spent just as long taking that for granted." "That's not fair," Mom started, but I cut her off. "No, Mom. What's not fair is how you treated me. You chose Lauren over me, like you always do. So I chose myself for once. You didn't want me on the trip? Fine. But you don't get to enjoy the benefits of my hard work without me." I grabbed my bag from the porch swing and turned toward my car. "I'm glad you're home safe, but don't expect things to go back to normal." "I'm done." I walked away, their stunned silence ringing louder than any of their previous yelling. For years, every visit to this house had left me emotionally drained. But this time, I felt lighter. The next morning, Grace showed up at my doorstep with 2 cups of coffee and a knowing smirk. "I heard about what happened," she said, handing me a cup. "Your mom called me yesterday." "Of course she did," I sighed, rolling my eyes. "And?" Grace shrugged, sipping her coffee. "I told her you were probably busy and would get back to her when you were ready." I laughed, shaking my head. "You're the best." "No, you're the best," she said, her tone turning serious. "Because you finally stood up for yourself. Don't let them pull you back in." Her words stayed with me long after she left. For so long I had bent over backward trying to earn my family's approval. But now I was living life on my own terms. A few weeks later, I booked a solo trip to Italy. It wasn't the same itinerary I had planned for them. It was better. Because this time, I wasn't planning around anyone else's needs but my own. I spent my days wandering cobblestone streets, marveling at ancient ruins, indulging in meals at charming little cafes. No one to rush me. No one to dismiss me, just me, my freedom, and a city full of possibilities. One afternoon, I sat on the Spanish steps with a gelato in hand, pulling out a small journal I'd brought with me. For years, I had written down plans, goals, dreams, but they had always revolved around making someone else happy. Now, for the first time, the dreams were my own. Learn a new language, start a small business, travel to at least 5 more countries. I smiled, the list growing with each passing thought. I hadn't realized how much of myself I had lost until I finally started choosing myself. A week after I got home, my phone buzzed with a new message from my mother. Mom, hope you had a nice trip. Maybe? We can all talk soon. I stared at the message for a long moment before setting my phone down. I wasn't ready to respond yet, and for the first time in my life, that was okay. Thank you watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more real-life stories like this one. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to stand up to family? I'd love to hear your stories.